none of them are itching to get in front of a camera and talk about this and explain why they are in favor of men and women's sports or why it's so important to give castration drugs to kids. None of them want to talk about it.
First of all, those are not the same shoes that got you ripped on at the State of the Union, are they?
No, those are the shoes.
Those are the ones.
They're not so bad in person, are they?
I think they're actually great in person.
Yeah, the light was hitting them in a weird way, and then I just got ripped to shreds for wearing these. These are technically dress boots.
They are. Wait,
let
me see the ankles.
What do you mean the ankles?
Like they're boots, right?
Yeah,
they're not
boots.
They're very nice, and they're actually like shiny and good shape. Are they semi-new?
Yeah, I don't know.
What's their problem?
I don't know, but I just wear, because I'll get a pair of boots and I'll just wear them. I'll go out in the yard and I was wearing these boots when I was we had a tree that was down in our driveway. I had to cut it up and drag the pieces away, and I just wore these boots. And my wife said, "Why are you wearing those boots?" I said, "Because they're boots."
No. Your wife is right. They're too nice to be wearing when you're chopping up a tree.
Yeah.
Apparently not. You only have one pair of boots?
No, I'll get a pair of boots and I'll just wear them, and those are the only ones I wear for every application until they fall apart, and then I got a new pair. That's
I do think you deserve credit for acknowledging that you can't do black shoes, brown belt, whatever the quandary was.
I agree. I was impressed with myself that I knew that rule. That's the one fashion rule I know.
Yeah, so your wife actually...
Because the belt has to match.
Thank you.
Right? That's the thing.
Yes, she should be super proud of you, actually.
Yeah.
For not going with that, because then you would have deserved to be crushed.
That was my whole thing. But that was the thing. Because I went to the State of the Union, and I knew that I had this. I had to wear these shoes, and I said to myself, "It'll be okay. No one's going to notice." And then everyone notices. So what I've learned is that whatever you're self-conscious about, everyone does notice, and they are judging you. Whatever you're worried they're thinking, they're definitely thinking exactly that. So just accept it.
Yeah, as if you cared.
Right. Well, that's the thing.
I mean, long before the boots, there's a lot. You don't care what they think.
Not very much. Not very much. I think you'd be a total sociopath if you literally don't care at all what anyone thinks.
For sure.
So it's not that you don't care what anyone thinks.
Right.
I think you have to have a small roster of people whose opinion matter to you. It's important to have that roster, because if there's nobody, well then, like I said, you're a sociopath, and you also have then there's no one in your life who can check you.
For sure.
But figure out the people that you trust, and those are the people whose opinion you care about, and then everybody else, it's just kind of the peanut gallery.
You just got there a lot sooner than I did, that's all.
Yeah. Well, it's not easy. It's not like I also can't take credit for it, because some of it is just being numb to it after a while.
Yeah.
When you're, I mean, you know this, when you're relentlessly attacked by hordes of people, at a certain point you just become kind of numb to it. So it's hard I don't know if I can call it like strength. It's more just this numbing that happens.
I think you're right.
And as a just kind of a survival mechanism, you have to get to a point where you don't care, where those voices don't matter to you, because if they do, you'll just be on a puddle on the floor, incapable of doing anything.
No, you're so right. Oh, okay, pin in that. Do you notice? Do you know my thing with my socks, like the obsession? And do you see that I prepared many choices for you if you want to like?
Oh, you do the shoeless thing? I think I did know about the shoeless thing.
I know, it's so annoying. Some people think it's annoying, but I'm like, I just...
Is that a requirement? Is it like...
It's encouraged.
It's encouraged? But is it a requirement?
Do you have like holes in those socks? No,
I actually I'm proud of my socks. I do put effort into my socks.
Oh, you do?
But I have this thing...
You just can't appreciate them.
Well, I have this thing about I wear my shoes in my own house.
You do not?
Oh, yeah.
You let your kids do it too?
Yes. I don't have this thing about you take your shoes off when you go in the house.
Why?
I have the opposite rule. I want you to keep your shoes on in my house.
Why?
Because I don't want to see your feet.
Ew.
No offense, your feet, because but you have the socks on, which is fine. But you start telling people to take their shoes off in your house. Next thing you know, you got bare feet in the house. You got all this. I'd rather just have your shoes. So I wear shoes. It's 11:30 at night. I'm relaxing in my house. I have shoes on.
Do you wear them on carpeting?
Yes.
Do you wear them in your bedroom?
Yes.
Oh. That's disgusting.
I'll sit with my feet up on the couch with my shoes on.
No.
That's what I do.
How are you still married?
You know,
She
'cause
quit. She gave up.
You got to right, exactly. You got to choose your battles. And so
And
for
that's one
me,
that she-
I flood the zone with so many issues that she has to just give in to some things pretty
Okay.
quickly, so she can focus on the other flaws.
Which I'm sure the list is very short. I'm also sure that you understand why people like me are disgusted by that, right? By wearing.
I don't understand.
Okay. So those shoes were just in Washington, D.C.
And you just said you like the shoes.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, in Washington, D.C. or here. But once you cross that threshold of your home, okay, so those shoes were in D.C., and then how did you get back from D.C.? On an airplane, a train?
yeah, I didn't
Plane, train,
walk.
automobile? Okay.
Yeah.
And so then any time between leaving where the speech was to getting home in Nashville, did you pee? Did you go to the bathroom?
Not on the shoes.
You stepped in a public restroom with those shoes.
Yeah, it's fine. They clean the restrooms sometimes.
Oh, do they? Okay, so you go
It
to
was
this
a bit.
fancy
It was
place.
a bit. I'll admit, I was a bit sticky on the floor, but I was.
See?
hoping-
And they're in your bedroom and on your couch. That's how I was never crazy about this until I had kids. And then I'm walking in the house, in the kitchen, on the same floor that my daughter just picked up a grape off of and ate it. And I'm like, whoa, I was just, at a concert in a porta potty. And now no,
But, my issue is here's my. Do you have pets?
not anymore.
Okay, well then.
Did I just?
I was gonna have a gotcha moment. You totally ruined it.
well-
You're not a dog person.
I am. I moved and she's, she didn't move with me. She's with my ex. So can I still say that I'm a dog owner?
But you're a dog. You like dogs.
I do.
You're like a dog person. Okay.
Yes, and they lick their ass, and I don't like that either. And then
Right.
they don't kiss my face because of it.
Okay, but my point is that you have a dog.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a dog going in and out of your house with the same paws, and then I'm not allowed. So basically, I have.
Dogs don't walk in public restrooms and in
Well,
airplane
what do you mean?
lavatories.
They go everywhere.
They go
I
in
mean,
my backyard, and that's it. And if she's on my bed, there is a blanket covering it and my couch. She had her own separate blanket. So all that.
And you let the dog
fungus-
on your bed though.
Actually, I didn't at the end, but if she ever did back in the day when she was smaller, I covered it with a separate blanket because I didn't want her butt on my
Yeah.
nice
Well,
comforter.
but here's my only point: that people are okay with their dogs trekking germs and filth all throughout their house. So why can't I? If the dog, because we have a dog, and if the dog can do it, why
Do you
can't
let your dog kiss you?
Absolutely not.
You're so inconsistent.
What do you mean kiss me? Like lick me?
Yeah.
No, I don't. Why is that inconsistent? I don't go around licking people. That's not.
Okay. Now we're gonna have to reconnect these dots. So, okay, as long as you do you.
Is it? I mean, because if is it important to you on a scale
What?
of like the shoe thing that I take the shoes off?
Well, it's not about the cleanliness of your shoes. It's about being, warm fuzzy socks.
I know
and
that's what I'm
opening
saying.
up.
Is that important? Like, is that
No.
on a scale of 5 is most important, 1 is not
No.
important at all?
No, I just judge people who choose not to.
Okay, so you're going to judge me silently, or not
I
even
just-
silently? You're judging me vocally.
So nice to meet you. Is it? But these are all clean and unworn. I just took the tag off. Do you want to take one home to your kiddos who maybe don't want to wear their socks? I mean, there's a bumblebee one. I just feel like I'm not
actually
giving you.
I used to be a beekeeper, so
Okay, so this will be my gift to you
okay.
when we're done. If you don't walk out before then.
I mean, I'll take free socks.
Yeah,
First
I have
interview
another.
I've ever been given socks.
I have another little cute gift too. But there you go.
All right. Yeah.
This is the most amazing start ever. Do you approve?
I do. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, they're not like name brand.
Well, I don't know what the name brands are for socks anyway.
Actually, me either. Look, I don't know your exact situation, but if you are like the thousands of homeowners that American Financing talks to every single month, you're struggling to keep up, barely making ends meet, drowning in high interest debt. It's not your fault. Life got more expensive, right? Inflation hit hard. And if you're still carrying credit card balances with 20% plus interest rates while your mortgage sits untouched, you are ignoring the one thing that could turn it all around, your home. And this is where American Financing can help. You tell me, would you trade 10 minutes for a shot at saving an average of $800 every single month? Because that is exactly what homeowners are doing when they call American Financing. Really, it's simple. It's a simple, no obligation call that could change everything. They have a team of salary-based mortgage consultants, so there isn't any incentive to put you into a loan that doesn't make any sense. Also, there are no upfront fees to find out how much you can save. So don't wait. Call American Financing today and start feeling that relief. 866-886-9262. That's 866-886-9262 or americanfinancing.net/sage. You inspired me, subject change, years ago with what you've been doing. By the way, I sat down with my parents. I got a preview of your last movie, documentary, Was Racist. Mm-hmm. And I sat there with my parents, who, my dad's black, my mom's white. So I'm obviously exactly 50% of each and have been told I'm a racist countless times over the last several years. It was so cool to sit there with my parents, who got married in 1971, whose mother, my mom's mom, and dad disowned my mom because she married a black man. And in October will be 54 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I'm so blessed. Like they're my why, besides my kiddos, you know?
Yeah.
And like you having the courage to do that stuff, and maybe you don't view it that way, but we did, watching it. And what is a woman as well? Like obviously this runs deep for me. But can I just ask you your why behind even wanting to go there with some of these topics? Let's just start with the racist one, because in many ways it's easier to just leave this stuff alone and let the crazies be crazies, but you chose to go there.
Yeah, well, part of it is, I don't know, it's hard where to begin. Why did we make the movie? Is that the question?
But you, not we, like you being the face of it and, the brainchild behind it, because it pisses off a lot of people. Yeah,
it does. Well, it's like, we do this for a living, talking in front of cameras and about, the issues. And I want to actually, there's no way to say without sounding super cliched, but I want to actually make an impact, make a difference. I'm trying to think of some non-cliche way to put it, but you can kind of, especially for me, because I do a daily, my sort of day job is a daily podcast, and kind of political commentary, reacting to news of the day, hour long, 5 days a week.
It's a lot.
And it's a lot of content. And I like to think that it makes some kind of impact, and I think it matters. I wouldn't do it if it didn't matter. But you are kind of a slave to the news cycle, and so I know that whatever I'm doing my show on a Thursday, and by Friday morning, probably none of this matters anymore. No one's listening to this anymore because we've moved on to the next thing. And so doing that every day it makes me even more motivated to want to do something that will actually, like I'll work on this one thing and we'll put it out into the world, and it will resonate with people and it will impact them for more than 30 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why doing a movie in general, I think that was the motivation there. And tackling race, it's the first movie, as you mentioned, was What is a Woman, about the trans issue. And after that, we saw the impact that had on the culture. We knew that we wanted to keep going. We wanted to do another one. And in some ways, it was just kind of a simple calculation. After we tackled trans and LGBT, what's the next big kind of theater of the culture war? And certainly race is
right there.
Is seemed like the logical next choice. We barely had to, with the team, we barely had to even discuss that part of it. It just seemed obvious that if we're going to try to do this again, it's going to be on race. The only question is how do you turn that into a movie? What's the story that you tell? Because race is such a big topic. What exactly about it are you trying to discover?
Right.
And then, so as we got into that creative process, then we started to realize that DEI was kind of is the more specific thing that we're going to explore within the general topic of race.
This was released last summer, right? 24 summer?
Yeah. Back in October. Yeah, the fall.
Yeah, that's what I thought. How long, beginning to end, was the process before it dropped?
Oh, it was long. It was 2 years, really.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Wow. There are so many moments, and I remember because I was supposed to interview you out in Los Angeles, and logistics, everything got messed up. I was so disappointed, and so I watched it again. I got the preview with my parents, and I was like, let's just watch this real quick, and it was late at night. Oh my gosh. Again, their perspective is so unique, right? Based on their upbringing in the 60s, 50s, 60s, and then their marriage and how they've been affected, et cetera. There were so many moments when, I was sitting there going like, Matt Walsh moments, and then to see their reaction and just disgusted and shaking their head and a couple times like emotional, I think one in particular is, and you'll have to maybe set it up better for me, but what was it called with the therapy session? Everybody's in a circle.
Yeah, the white grief workshop.
Thank you, the white grief workshop. And my dad's like, this isn't real. This can't be real. I'm like,
It's real.
Dad.
Yeah, it's real.
Real, yes. Like, what was first of all, you're a freaking incredible actor.
Thanks.
Secondly, like, what was your biggest takeaway from that part?
Well,
the white grief.
Yeah, a couple things. First of all, not only was that real, but there were some aspects of it it seemed so incredible that we didn't even include them, because even though they're funny, it would make it seem even more like we faked it.
Really?
So for example, one of the guys in the circle with me was a professional cuddler. He was what they call a cuddlist. And so this is what he does for a living, is he cuddles people. And we thought about, how do we include that in the movie somehow? Some kind of lower third graphic even. We just put his name up in professional cuddler. But then we thought, that's so on the nose. It's so
unbelievable.
Like it will look like we staged it, or
totally.
This is an actor. So we just didn't even put it in. But these are real people. This is when you get in. There's a world where this stuff, the people walk around and they're obsessed with this, and and that's probably the biggest takeaway, is that all the people in the circle, it's one thing, you got the woman who's running it, and you talk about the why, like what is her why? Well, that's a little bit easier for me to figure out, because there's money in it.
Yes.
She got paid quite handsomely for that session. I think it was $30,000 or something we put up on the screen. So she makes money off of it. She also there's a lot of power in.
Yeah.
It kind of feeds your ego, I can imagine, to be standing in a circle and you're the one standing and you're kind of passing moral instruction to these lost souls. So I think it's kind of money, ego, power, and I think that's what motivates the people that are kind of running the grift. The ones who are sitting in the circle, though, that becomes a little bit more, that's a little darker, and that's a little hazier. What do they get out of it? Because they're not making any money off of it. In fact, a lot of times they're paying, so they're losing money.
Yeah.
And then they're sitting there and being lectured to and being told that they're a bunch of scumbags. What do they get out of it? And the only thing I could figure is that this is kind of a replacement for religion. It's almost a pseudo-religious experience that I think, and maybe there's too much, maybe I'm psychoanalyzing too much, but I think that everybody has guilt. Everyone walks around knowing that we all do things that are wrong. You feel guilty about it. And if you're a religious person, I'm Catholic, so when I feel guilt about something, I know what to call that. I have a framework for that. That's sin.
Yeah.
And I can go to church. I can go to confession, and I can get absolution. I know where to take those feelings. I know where they're coming from, and I know where to take them. I understand them. But if you're not a religious person and you're kind of a secular, left-wing, atheist, you might say you're spiritual, but whatever. And you walk around with these feelings of guilt, you don't really know where they come from. You don't know how to understand them. And then you've got these race hustlers who come along and they tell you, well, I'll tell you why you feel that way. I'll tell you where those feelings are coming from. It's because you're a white person and you have this ancestral guilt that you carry around. And actually, you are racist against black people, even if you don't know it, because of all these microaggressions that you commit and all that sort of thing. So I think that's why they're there. It's almost like it's almost for a similar reason why a Catholic might go to confession, or why any Christian might go to church. It's almost this replacement for religion. Mm-hmm. Except the problem is that as a Christian, when you ask for forgiveness and are given forgiveness, you can walk away feeling healed. You don't carry that burden anymore. The problem with the people in the circle is that there's no healing. You go there and you say, I feel racist, and then you're told, well, yeah, you are racist, and you're never going to be not racist, because you're inherently racist because you're white. And then on the flip side, the message to people who are not white, to people of color, is, I guess is the politically correct term these days, is you don't have guilt, you don't have the racial guilt, but you are a victim, and you'll never be not a victim.
Right.
And so the resentment that you feel for being a victim, you can never not feel it because you're always going to be that. So it's a hopeless message.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
But for the people in the circle, well, hey, isn't that what reparations are for? You pay whatever percentage it is, and then you're forgiven, right?
That's the scam, right? That's the scam. There's always well, let's do this,
Yeah.
and then it'll be okay. And then you do that, and then it's never enough. It's like you ever read your kids the Give a Mouse a Cookie book?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like that with the left. It's you give the mouse the cookie, and the next thing you know, he wants the milk, and then he wants the next thing you know, he's eating you out of house and home.
And that's exactly what we're witnessing right now. I've actually never told this story, but you made me think of it real quick. I was moderating an event, and it was race and sport and how to just bring things together. This is probably 2017. This is pre next level DEI, certainly pre George Floyd, COVID, et cetera. And there was a woman on the stage who I really, really liked, and she said, I just want to apologize for our actions and our behaviors. And the audience is probably about 50% black and a lot of Hispanic and white. And she kept going, and as the moderator, I'm like, what is she apologizing for? And I really couldn't figure it out. So I asked her, so what are you apologizing for? And she said, for all white people.
Wow.
And the actions and all the years, and I sat there, Matt, and I was like, okay. This is, again, 2017. Now I'd pipe off and just say whatever, but I really thought to myself, certainly at ESPN, I still was there for another 6 years. And I thought, okay, if I say this, and I just knew that at that moment I had to say it. And I said, no offense, forgive me, but I am offended by you telling me that my white mother is a racist. Because I'm pretty sure, have you seen me? I'm pretty sure she's not. And I think, and it was very emotional for me to say it.
What did she say to that?
She didn't know what the heck to say. She's like, well, I go, no, but when you stand on a stage with a platform, with the influence that you have, and choose to say that, you don't know how young people are going to take that, the effects of it. And I look back at that now, not knowing what was to come, and it really is devastating. But by saying that, I was a racist too, right? So it is a sick circle that I feel a responsibility to speak up about, and my experience is certainly is different than yours, not necessarily unique, because you have your own too. That if we don't do, not everybody can do what you did with this film, but we're done. Like if more people don't choose to say, hey, we're not all perfect, but just because of this, or this, does not mean you're a racist. And it was a turning point for me in my life because she looked at me and assumed it was okay to say, right?
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
And I don't know where, I do feel like because of things like what you've done and continue to do every day, and the change in the White House, honestly, I do feel like there's hope that this stops. And you're seeing it with some of the moves with DEI, right?
Yeah, there's certainly hope, and there's always hope. I think that people on the right are declaring that woke is dead, and I've probably said the same thing. And it's sort of an expression of of relief, and we're quite high on the recent political victories, and Trump is getting a lot more done in a shorter amount of time than I ever anticipated. He's gotten more done.
Crazy.
He's gotten more done in 2 months than the first Trump White House did in 4 years. So I think that has, if you're conservative, that has you kind of like on cloud nine. But I do think upon more reflection, some of the declarations
Yeah.
of woke being dead might be a bit premature. In fact, they're certainly premature in the sense that the left, broadly speaking, they're not going to just go away. They're not going to say, okay, well, you guys win, and then give up forever. That's not the way it works. Especially when they still have a lot of institutional power. They're not now. They're backed into a corner right now, and they lost the White House,
Yeah.
and they're being rooted out of the federal government, which I think is great. But Hollywood is still far left, and the media is, and academia is, the school system is. So I'm not trying to be a downer, you know.
No, but it's reality.
Right. So the fight continues. I mean, this is a generational struggle that we're in, and I think that it's better to think of it in terms of there's kind of the culture war, which I think is a real thing. The culture war is not over. I think a few battles have been won by the side of sanity and truth. I do think there are some things that are maybe not quite officially behind us yet, but we will be able to put behind us, I believe. Things like men and women's sports.
Yeah.
I think that the left is just losing that battle in every way, and they've also they really have lost the will to fight back on that. It was
Really though, based on the vote, as we tape this earlier this week, where the Senate, I mean, look what happened. Every single Democrat. I mean, so to me, that fight is still there, shockingly, because they're not looking at the New York Times polls even, saying what most Americans agree on. So that battle is still...
It's still going. It's not over yet, but I feel optimistic that
Okay.
we have so much momentum that in the not too distant future we'll be at a point where that really is just won.
Okay.
Same with the castration, mutilation of kids, so-called gender affirming care. These are kind of two separate issues, but I compare them in that I think that we're winning, and the other side doesn't seem to have the will to launch any kind of argument. Now it's one thing, when the vote comes up, they still vote against the bill because they feel that they're beholden to the radical fringes of their party, but they're not out there. I mean, the Democrats aren't out there doing press conferences and making a big thing out of this. None of them are itching to get in front of a camera and talk about this and explain why they are in favor of men and women's sports or why it's so important to give castration drugs to kids. None of them want to talk about it. They don't feel like they're at a point yet where they can actually vote to put an end to it, but they don't want to talk about it. I mean, look at Kamala Harris during the campaign. Trump ran on the trans stuff pretty aggressively, and Kamala ran as far from it as she could possibly get.
Yes.
Which sort of tells you everything you need to know. And it's also it's an untenable, unsustainable agenda. The trans agenda is, because it's so clearly false and fundamentally indefensible. There's just no argument. You are asking people to suspend their innate knowledge of, human biology and physical reality. And as we discovered, there were several dark years, where a lot of people did, suspend that knowledge, pretend they didn't know in order to be polite. But that dam can't hold forever.
Yeah.
And I think once the dam breaks, and people realize that, oh no, this is crazy, and I'm allowed to say that it's crazy. Once that happens, there's no putting. I don't think there's any way to contain that again or put the toothpaste back in the tube.
And unfortunately, those people who were affected, who were allowed to be indoctrinated, whose I think mental illness in many ways was adhered to, they listened to, those people's lives are changed forever. And the timing is everything, because 20 years ago, this wouldn't have been a thing, I don't think, not to this level. So my heart breaks for some of the people that, were part of your documentary, and all the experts and doctors and psychiatrists who are pushing it and proud of it and acknowledging it. And I mean, I was blown away, I think almost more so by that. Both were incredible films, but I don't think I had realized the depth to which so many will go to push it and to ignore facts, ignore science.
That's also why, as much as I think that we can effectively win on these two, issues, there are always going to be like the holdouts on the sort of pro-trans
Sure.
side. There are some people who can just never admit that they were wrong because they're kind of lifers in this thing, and the reason is that you've got parents who quote unquote transition their kids, and for those parents to admit that, oh, you know what, I'm wrong about this, they would have to admit that I've done something horrifically abusive to my child. Or doctors who have done this to hundreds of kids.
Yes.
And for those doctors to turn around and say, you know what, I'm wrong, and I have harmed hundreds of children based on a lie. I think there are very few doctors, very few people that have the moral integrity to admit that they were wrong about something that important.
Do you think the doctors that you sat down with, fully believed what they were saying to you?
No. No, because like I said, you can't believe it unless you are actually crazy, and I mean that in like the clinical sense. Unless you are actually, your mind is completely divorced from reality. Unless that's the case, we all know that a man is a man and a woman is a woman. And just because if I were to stand up right now and say, oh, I think I'm actually a woman, that doesn't change anything about me. I still am what I am. That the simple declaration that I am something else doesn't make me that thing. The fact that I perceive myself to be something doesn't make me the thing that I perceive myself to be. This is just basic reality. It's not even a question. You don't need to be any sort of, as much as Ketanji Brown Jackson says she can't answer it unless she's a biologist. You don't even need to have any understanding of biology at all. This is just physical reality.
So why do they say it? Why do they push it?
Well, for a lot of these doctors, there's a lot of money in it. Not to oversimplify it, but money is always...
Just like race.
Yeah, a lot of money in it. And then I think there's the ideology of it. I think that the trans activists were able to sort of affix themselves to the kind of broader gay rights, so-called gay rights movement. I'm not going to say affix, actually. I think there are some, there's like the movement, they say get LGB without the T, I actually think that these things all fit together. It's kind of inevitable once you get the gay rights movement. This part is a sort of inevitable extension of it. But regardless, I think for a lot of people on the left, they came to believe that, I have to defend this because then if I don't, I lose. Like I got to defend the T because if I don't, then I lose the B, G, and L. And so they were sort of backed into it. I think they backed themselves into it, and that's kind of the way the slippery slope works.
It's just devastating. And I, to your point, I hope that someday they can acknowledge it at least. It won't fix things or heal, but maybe it will make others think twice before going down that slippery slope for any other topic, who knows.
I hope so.
Gavin Newsom coming out within the last day or so saying that he does not believe that men should be in women's sports.
Yeah.
And
he didn't even quite say that. He's looking for some kind of middle ground that doesn't exist. He said, it seems like he said that because he said when Charlie Kirk asked him about men and women's sports, he said, well, it's deeply unfair, which would seem like he's endorsing our viewpoint. But he didn't then say, oh yeah, well, we're going to ban it, or yes, I'm going to comply with Trump's executive order. He just said it was unfair. And then he said, well, but we also have to, this is a very vulnerable group and we have to have grace and patience and be kind and all this sort of thing. So he's looking for, and this is I think what the left is going to do, they're going to look for some kind of middle ground that moderate a bit, but not come all the way over to what they perceive to be the conservative right-wing side. But the moderate position doesn't exist on this issue.
It does not.
And I would like to think that everything is, there's no black and white. There's black and white. A lot of things are black and white. And so the trans agenda makes a claim. The claim is that our gender, our sex, which they first claimed that gender and sex are two different things. Now they say that they're the same. But they say that male and female are not immutable inherent characteristics, that it's fluid, and that whether I'm a male or female is determined by my self-perception, by how I identify. That's the claim being made by that side. And that claim is either true or false. And if it's true, if what they're saying is true, then yeah, then trans, quote unquote, trans women who are men should be allowed in women's sports, because that would mean that they're women.
The left is livid with him right now, though,
right? But
for the
my point
perception.
is, yeah, if it's not true, if it's not true, then you lose all of it. Then there's no men and women's sports. There's no there's not just transitioning kids, but actually transitioning anyone of any age is barbaric. So you lose the whole thing, And I think what people like Gavin Newsom are going to try to do is hold on to like the fundamental. They're not going to come out and say, oh yeah, well the transgenderism is just false. It's not real. They're not going to say that. But that's the only choice that's available. It's either true or it's not. And there just is no middle ground.
How do you think this ends up then eventually? Because you have the Californias and Maines of the world that are saying, yeah, we're not gonna comply. And we saw what happened a couple of weeks ago with Trump, and was it the governor? Yeah, the governor of Maine.
Governor of Maine, yeah.
Yeah, and see you in court. How does it eventually? What do you think it looks like when it's all over?
Yeah, I think you're going to have I think you're going to have places like Maine that try to keep the fight up. But I
once they pull, once you don't give them their federal funding for this, then people.
Federal funding, and also as public opinion continues to drift away from them. I mean, the last poll I saw, it's this is officially an 80-20 issue. 80% of Americans, particularly when it comes to the sports, are not in favor of men and women's sports. Even among Democrat voters, it's like 67% think that men and women should be segregated in sports. So it's going to become, I talked about it being untenable. It's like it's a logically untenable position that the left has on trans. It's also going to become politically untenable when it's not even a winning issue among their own voters. And as that continues to happen, I think that they're going to sort of have to throw up the white flag.
That's why, to me, it's shocking, though, that every Democrat with that Senate vote, not one said, hey, let's just try to find middle ground, even, right? You have to have a yes or no vote, I guess. But now I think it's going to be so costly to them. I do. I think this is because of the 80-20 and how even the New York Times or CBS News, those left-leaning polls, are saying this is a clear-cut issue. I do think, I hope and pray that it comes back to bite them, come midterms in a year and a half or whenever that is. And then to your point, you talked about this on your show recently with DEI and even what's happening in Washington, D.C. And it seemed like, oh my gosh, this issue and Black Lives Matter, it's never going to go away. It's taken over the country. And now even the people who backed it and supported it have gone quiet. And seem to want true separation from it. So I wonder if it looks like that, where, okay, you've got a really good 5-year run here. And then when the tide turns against you fully and it starts hitting you in the wallet, then it changes. I wonder if it's similar,
I think it's similar to that. And the Black Lives Matter, I mean, they're taking down the Black Lives Matter mural in D.C. with very little protest apparently from the left-wing activists, including some of the people involved in painting it to begin with. Which, if they tried to take it down in 2022, you can imagine it'd be a very different reaction. But now they're saying, well, we got other things to worry about. I think that the Black Lives Matter movement obviously began before 2020. I think it began technically around Zimmerman. That was back in 2013, I think. Mm-hmm. But the kind of 2020 explosion, both literally and figuratively, I think a lot of them are embarrassed by it now. It was like this, moment of national psychosis. And to me at the time, it was insane, and I said that. The more we're removed from it, it feels like a fever dream or something. It's like, how did all that happen? That's crazy. So I think even some people on the left are starting to have the morning after hangover a bit from some of that madness. And 2020 feels like it's what kind of when trans was at its peak, and then you had BLM, and of course COVID in the middle of that. It was just all of the craziest things in our culture coming to a head at the same time.
Devastating time. My kids were older than yours, certainly, during COVID. So what was that, 5 years ago? So 13, 15, 17 at the time, 14, 16, 18.
Yeah.
And I'm a Catholic as well. I try to forgive, but I really don't fully with that. And
because of the lockdowns and things, you mean?
Yeah, and how they chose to ignore real issues with our children and the elderly, of course, who were dying alone in nursing homes. And I saw a real effect. I lived in the Northeast and in Connecticut, which was, very, very liberal blue state and completely shut down. And if you looked at someone the wrong way with a mask on, then, you just all the names that you're called. But it affected my kids, and it affected millions of kids.
Right.
And we can look at the statistics with education and how the learning is so far behind, and the suicide rate went up. And there's so much that I'll be fine, pissed off a little bit still from it, but for our kids that have had to, my daughter didn't get her prom, rites of passage for those kids. And I think, I don't know. Yes, we forgive, we move on, we learn. But what do we take from this? Whether it's the Black Lives Matter movement, where people made it, you feel terrible if you didn't put that black square up that day, if you don't go to your white guilt classes, if you don't acknowledge your privilege, what is the lesson that you hope we take from this while still remaining sensitive? Because there certainly are issues of racism.
Well, there's so many lessons. I mean, one is, and they're all kind of the things that we should have already known, and that we did in theory know, but sometimes you need it demonstrated to you. And one of them is never follow a panicked mob. Even if the panicked mob is doing something that you think might be defensible, still don't do it. I mean, still don't follow them. This is what I said, and this is part of the whole BLM panic, was I started tearing down the statues all across the country.
Yes.
All the statues had to go. And I would hear from, and they were tearing down the founders, Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and then Theodore Roosevelt was coming down. And then we go up to, and then they also did some Confederate soldiers and generals.
Army bases that are being renamed.
Army bases. And so I would hear from even some conservatives who would say that they're generally opposed to the tearing down of the statues. But, some of these statues, they got this one down in Atlanta, and it's according, supposedly a monument to white supremacy, and it was put up by the Klan or whatever. And my point to them was always, you know what? Even if among the 40 statues they're taking down, even if there are 2 or 3 in there that you could make an argument for, theoretically, you should still oppose them tearing it down now like this. Because if we're going to take down a statue, and I'm not saying sometimes you take down a statue. It's not like just because a statue was put up, it has to stay there forever. But if you're going to take it down, we're not going to take it down as a mob, tearing it down in the street and then setting it on fire and throwing it into the water. That's not how we're going to do this. So if the mob was going to tear down a statue, even if it was one that I didn't like, I would suddenly become a defender of that statue just because I'm not going to join a mob. I'm not going to be with the mob on this. And so I think you take that lesson and apply it to everything that was happening in 2020 with the masks and COVID and the lockdowns, trans, BLM. It was nothing but a giant, mindless, panicked, scared mob reacting, being manipulated and reacting out of fear. And I was, we were fortunate in a lot of ways to be a little bit insulated from some of the COVID stuff because we lived at the time in rural Pennsylvania in Amish country. We had Amish buggies going down our street, that kind of thing.
Amazing.
Yeah. And we homeschooled our kids, and our kids were also obviously younger at the time. So there was the school shutdown was not a thing for us. We were already out kind of in the woods, and we were in a place where people just weren't doing masks at any point. But I mean, I can remember going, you had to go into town to go to the grocery store. And I mean, I think everyone probably remembers like their first, at least for me, I remember my first experience once the lockdown started and the masking started, going to like a place out in the world.
Yeah.
Just going to the grocery store. And it was like something out of a, 28 Days Later or something. I mean, it was just crazy. And
remember the arrows and the aisles?
yeah, the arrows, and worse than that is just how people were looking at each other.
Yeah.
Looking at each other with this suspicion. And if somebody coughed, God forbid, or sneezed around you, the shooting looks like this person is infected, all of that was just pure panic and fear. And when people are doing things because they're afraid, you just don't join.
Can't.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I didn't realize how much I missed until that time was with the masks, you don't see smiles.
Mm-hmm.
A smirk. I learned to try to read someone's eyes because I know that when I smile, my wrinkles show, And so it's like, okay, that's a good thing, right? Because there's a smile behind there. And I don't think any of us fully appreciated the importance of that.
Yeah, I've only smiled 3 times in my life. And even I was feeling it. But yeah, the masking. So this is, you talk about lessons we could take. Another lesson is that, listen to your instincts and your common sense, even when the mob and you've got powerful forces in society that are trying to make you feel crazy for saying something sensible. When it's your common sense on one hand and the mob and the media on the other, stick with your common sense, which is easy to say. It's easy to say that, but when you're actually in the thick of it, it's a lot harder. But just stick through it, and because eventually the mob's going to calm down, and you're going to be right. And there was obviously so much of that with COVID and with masking. I mean, I can remember just as one example, when the masking thing first started, and I made the point on Twitter early on that, hey, among all the other problems with having people in masks, it's like now you've got people, you walk into a store, everyone is anonymous, everyone has their face covered, and so how is this not going to lead to rampant crime and theft? Because everyone has their face covered. So it's like you're creating a crime of opportunity. You're creating so much opportunity for crime.
Yeah.
Because prior to COVID, you wouldn't be able to walk into like Walmart with your face covered. Or walk into a bank with your face covered, it would automatically be like, well, we suspect.
I didn't even think of that.
Right, and I remember saying this at the time, and just getting excoriated by all these people say, oh, you're like, it was the dumbest point to make in the world. And then what do you know? Like a couple of months later, we have mass riots in the street with people who are all masked, and then we go into several years of mass looting, a shoplifting epidemic. You've got entire, drugstores and chains that are shutting down and being driven out of cities because of the looting and shoplifting. And then you look at the videos, and 95% of the time, all those people are in masks.
Yep.
So it's like clearly it was going to lead to that.
Mm-hmm.
And when I brought that up early on, I was made to feel like it was the dumbest thing anyone's ever said, because this is what they do. This is how they get in your mind.
Did you question yourself at all?
No, I didn't quite. No, I didn't, because I didn't. I kind of said it. I said my piece on that. Everyone said you're the biggest moron in the world, and then I didn't. I was like, okay, well, check back in a year. We'll see where we're at.
Well, even now, if you look at the college campuses and Columbia and Penn, and where the protests are, and anti-Israel, they all have masks on to this day. So I wonder, again, it's like deep down, do they believe this crap too? Some of them certainly do, but is it just to make trouble and be part of a movement? Because if you really believe it, take that off. Stand tall, stand proud.
Absolutely.
But not anymore. Not Not at least in those areas too, where it's perfectly acceptable until Donald Trump says, okay, fine, Colombia, you're not going to get your $400 million either.
Yeah.
So again, you just have to have the right person there to say enough. Like, go do you and protest and stand up for what you believe in to an extent. Hate is hate is hate. Can I ask about, like, I told you at the beginning that I have been inspired by you and your, you might not call it this, but I think there's courage in speaking your truth, especially based on all the stuff we've been talking about. And, you know, a lot of us have had decisions to make. Okay, do I stay silent here? Do I speak up here? And most people do what? They stay silent. Because it is, I get it, right? It's safer. And sometimes it is smarter. But where did that come from for you? Where did that, was there a moment in time where you said, okay, I've had enough. I'm not going to hold back anymore?
It's a little bit easier for me because I have 6 kids myself now, and I was raised, I have 5 brothers and sisters, so I was coming from a family of 6 kids. And I grew up in the Baltimore area. It's pretty, liberal area, obviously. We went to public school, all 12, I guess 13 years of K through 12. And I come from a real strong Catholic family, very conservative. And from a very young age, because my parents knew they were kind of sending us into this environment that would be hostile. It's not as bad, it wasn't as bad then as it is now, but it was still bad. Sending us into an environment where that would be hostile to the values that they instilled in us. And so we were encouraged from a young age to stand by our values. And we were told, even because we'd have issues with teachers that are far left teachers, and we've got to teach, it's a history class, and even back then it was the whole, all the European settlers were a bunch of genocidal maniacs, and not quite as extreme as it is now, but again, and even then, even with teachers, our parents would tell us that if your teacher is saying something that is not true, and you speak up and you get in trouble and you get sent to the principal's office, you will not be in trouble at home. In fact, you're more likely to be in trouble if something happens that's wrong and you don't speak up.
Wow.
So I kind of had that drilled in me from a young age. And now, as an adult, like I said, I have 6 kids. So for me, it's not even a question. You go back to the trans thing or any of these issues. It's, again, sort of easy for me because I have kids that have to live in this world.
Yeah.
They have to live in this culture. And
that's great parenting by your parents.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it's kind of a cheat code in life. I know you said your parents have been married for what,
54?
Yeah. A cheat code in life is having good parents, who love you. And you can kind of take that for granted because not everybody does.
For sure. Any other siblings? Speak up in this vote. Obviously, your platforms may be unique to other siblings. I don't know, but is everybody as opinionated and outspoken?
Yeah, everyone. We're all a bunch of crazy right-wing extremists.
I know.
My youngest sister is actually a nun.
Really?
Yeah.
Where is she?
She's in Virginia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So and all my other siblings are married and they have a bunch of kids. My oldest sister has 11 kids.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And how old is she?
She's 42 now.
You said you're older one? Okay, yeah, you're 38.
Yeah.
Oh my, 11.
She does, yeah.
That is odd. Good Catholic family.
Yeah. Well, so when we get the whole family together, it's just an insane number of people.
I cannot even imagine. So you're 6, her 11, and there's still 4 more of your siblings that have how many kids?
And they all have, between them, we're at like 25 or 6 kids now.
So cool.
Yeah.
That is special. That is so cool.
Yeah, it is cool.
What about mom and dad? They're still here?
Yep.
Wonderful.
Yeah, still married, still
Still
doing well, retired.
Yeah, leading the 6 of you and all the grandkids. Has there ever been a time, because it's happened with me a lot, where mom and dad have been like, okay, didn't have to go there. That was a lot. Was that necessary? Please reel it back in a little bit. And not, for me, it wasn't because they disagreed. It was because they saw their daughter getting crushed, and threats and death threats and the ugliness that came to my children because of something like that. Yours must be on another level. I know it is. I've seen it. That comes at you when you speak up about anything. How have mom and dad handled that?
They've handled it well. I can't think of an example of them telling me that I should pull back on anything. Same for my wife, who's obviously much more immediately impacted by a lot of this stuff. So we have a 24-hour security at our house, which was made necessary by
The movies?
the movies and the threats, and we've had the experience of we had to move, but we had a house where the address ended up all over the internet. People were showing up to the house, and so we went through that. Pretty, it's one thing when it's all on the internet, but when you've got people at your house where your kids are, it's like, this is real now. This is not just, people like to say the internet isn't real life, but it is real life. These are real people. I mean, there's a lot of bots on the internet too, but aside from the bots, these are real people. And if you've got, thousands of death threats coming in or whatever from the internet, like those are actual people that are saying this right now. The good thing is most of them are never going to even attempt to follow through on it. But yeah, sometimes you're in a situation where it kind of becomes, it jumps out into physical reality in a very real way. So we've been through that, but to my wife's great credit, she's also, I've never had anyone close to me in my life say to me, well, this is probably too far. You should pull back. Because I think everyone recognizes that this is what
needs to be, yeah. And the thing is, I did put myself in my parents' shoes because I understand. And when your child, even if your child is in their 50s, it's still like, it still hurts, and you still want to protect, even if they don't need to be protected per se. Figuratively, literally is something different right now.
Well, it's also harder for you because you were coming from a place that was not political, right? Like it wasn't your job to have controversial political opinions. For me, that's part of the job.
Yes.
So I actually think it does make it easier for me. So I have a lot of respect for people like you that, that's a real choice you have to make. And there's always the option of, like, if I were to just say tomorrow, okay, I don't want to say anything controversial ever again, pretty soon I wouldn't have a job anymore because there would be no audience. But when you have the option, when you could say, okay, I'm just going to pull back from the controversial stuff and just do this thing over here, and I'll still have a nice, comfortable life. When you have that option and you choose not to do that I think is where the real courage is.
Or stupidity, or call it what you want, depending on the day, the moment, the person, the situation. And the only reason I spoke up is just because they had allowed certain political opinions. If you fit a certain category, which is obviously left, very liberal, and that was allowed, and then it wasn't if it was the other side, and it was just the hypocrisy of that. So, and that's not for everybody. I know that. And it's a story for another day. But I received those threats and the death threats and the stuff that did make me go, oh my gosh. And as a mother, I'm like, okay, if I just shut up and just talk about football, then, and I think that's the part where you see that your words affect those who you love the most, to have 24-hour security, to have that necessary at your home. What was that like, that decision? And was there a moment, again, where you're like, okay, it's one thing to, see some stuff on the internet. It's another thing where you are fearful for the security of your wife and kids.
Yeah, certainly. For me, I mean, it's one thing when all the ire is being directed at me personally. That's just nothing at this point. But when my children, when someone shows up at the house and my kids come running into the house and they say, hey, Daddy, someone's outside, and they're, they have their phone out and they're filming or something, which happened a few times. If there's ever a moment where you're going to question, like, well, maybe there should be a career change. I can't pretend I never thought about that. And if I was not in a position where I could ensure their safety, and a lot of people are not in a position where they can get 24-hour security at your house. If I was not able to do that for them, and if I was not able to buy a new house and have 24-hour security, and I had to just stay in this house. It's all over the internet, and people are coming to the house, and I can't, it would be a very different calculation. And I don't know exactly what I would do in that spot. But I do know that, the safety of my family is the number one priority. But like I said, I feel that I'm doing this for my family, both to provide for them and also because I want to do my own little small part to help the culture because my kids are going to live in it. But if harm comes to my family, God forbid, then it's then it's pointless. So
I imagine you've had some really interesting conversations with your kids about this.
Yeah, we have. I like to keep them insulated from it as much as I can, and we did for a long time. And then things happen where you have to have some of these conversations. I mean, we had, fortunately, things have settled down a lot. You move, you get the security, and things really settle down. Feel very safe in the house, and that's not an issue anymore. Out in public, surprisingly, it actually surprises me how pleasant the kind of interactions are in the public. I very rarely have anyone come up to me in a hostile way. I know I'm sure when I go out in public, there are plenty of people who see me and don't like me.
They'll do that.
Right, they just don't say anything. That's fine, whatever. Whisper amongst yourselves.
Yes.
But, there have been a couple of occasions, only a couple, where someone's come up to me when my kids were there and expressed their disapproval. And not in a violent or aggressive way or anything like that, but in an unpleasant way, which necessitates more conversations with the kids. But you try to look at that as sort of a positive too, because it's a kind of a learning opportunity for the kids, and it's a way to show them that, listen, if you remember the first time this happened, we were actually at church, and we were leaving church, and this was a couple of years ago, and this guy comes down and tells me that I'm not welcome at the church because I'm a bigot. And
At a Catholic church?
Yeah. And my kids were with me, but they were kind of standing off to the side, and he wasn't yelling, so I wasn't sure if they heard him. And I told him to F off, not using that language, but in no uncertain terms. And he walked away, and I wasn't sure if it registered on them the conversation. It was a short conversation, he wasn't yelling, and I was hoping, and I didn't want to make a scene because I was hoping they just didn't notice it and they didn't know what the conversation was about. But then we get in the car, and my son starts crying because he did hear it, and I guess it was his first time. It was the first time he realized that there are people in the world who hate his dad.
Gosh.
Which is a tough thing.
How old was he at the time?
9, 8 or 9. So that was tough, but it was also because then he wanted to know, why don't they like you, and why, and so I was able to explain to him that, if you do what you think is right and you stand for the truth in the world, there are going to be people who hate you for it, and that's okay. We pray for those people because they're confused.
They are. Did you go back to the church?
I did. Yeah, I've been back. We go to different churches around, but I've been back there. I haven't seen that guy again. So.
You forced him to leave. Yeah. What a lesson, what a moment for probably an unforgettable conversation for you. At 9, I bet he remembers it too, if he was, moved to the point of tears at how someone treated his dad.
Yeah.
I think that's the tough part of parenting, right? And again, for what we're choosing to do, is that there's going to be those moments. 6 kids.
Yeah.
Did I read 2 sets of twins?
Yeah, 2 sets of twins. We started with twins. Our first kids were twins, and then our last kids that we had 2 years ago, most recent, were also twins. So we kind of bookended twins.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So 2 years old, 2.
Yeah, 2 are 2 years old. We have a 5-year-old, an 8-year-old, and 2 11-year-olds. That's
amazing.
Yeah.
Good Catholic boy, Matt Walsh.
Well, we cheated. I mean, I could say I have 6 kids. I can brag about having 6 kids, but it was 4 pregnancies. So we did the 2-for-1 special twice.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
I can't, can't say that.
The second set of twins were, at least in the newborn phase, were a lot harder than the first set.
Why?
I don't know, I think at least I did. I went in a little bit cocky, because I thought, like, we've done this. You know.
Yeah.
Most people, if they get twins, they're going to be overwhelmed, but we've been through this. We're veterans. It'll be fine. And it was real tough for about 6 months. And
How so?
I think well, first of all, we got 4 other kids.
Okay, that matters.
Our first set, we only, it was just those kids.
Yeah.
But we didn't have, I don't know, there's a kind of ignorance is bliss. Like with our first set of twins, we had never, we didn't have anything to compare it to. But with the second set, we kind of knew, you sort of know, what the challenges are going to be. And that makes it harder. And they both were colicky. So we had 2 colicky infants the same time.
Oh my gosh.
It just basically nonstop crying for about 6 months. Just never. There was never a time in the house where there wasn't at least one baby crying.
Oh my
For about
gosh.
6 months. Yeah. But then it stops. But then and this is one of the key lessons of parenthood through 11 years now. Is this too shall pass.
Yes.
Nothing lasts forever. Whatever, kids go through phases, and every time you're in the phase, it feels like it'll never end, and you're worried that, oh my gosh, it's like
Yeah.
as they get older, the kids go through things, and you think, oh, they're being screwed up for life. This is never, and then most of the time, just one day, it's okay, and.
If you've survived, yeah, it's
If
good.
you survive, you just have to,
Identical, fraternal?
The first set were fraternal, and the second set were identical.
Oh my gosh. Boys, girls?
You have 4
Total?
boys, 4 boys and 2 girls.
And then the twins are?
So the last set were the identical boys, and then we had a boy and a girl over the first set of twins.
And then there's another girl in the middle.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
You're young, so which means your wife is?
38.
Yeah, that's young. So do you want more?
I feel really good at 6. I feel like it's a good spot. It's a good spot to be. We would accept, obviously. I mean, we it's God's plan, but I feel it feels good to have 6 kids. Is a
I mean,
good
I'm
number.
sure you're competitive with your siblings, right? So you're a slacker compared
Yeah,
to
but I
your
can't.
sis-
There's no keeping up. And 11. That's the thing. Because at 6 kids, and I talk to someone who's got less kids, and I can't even imagine. So how do you do that? But then I look at my own family. I look at my sister, and I'm like, how do you do 11? I don't
Yeah.
know how. And the answer is just kind of like, well, this is your life. What do you mean? How
Yeah.
do you do it? You just When people say that to me about 6 kids, it's like, well, I don't know.
Just do it.
You just do it. That's it.
I have so many friends who have 2, and they're like, really thinking about a 3rd. And I'm like, you're not asking my advice, but I'm gonna give it to you anyway. And if you're thinking about it, please do it. You will never, ever regret it.
Mm-hmm.
But I know a lot of people who regret not doing it.
Exactly.
I regret not having a 4th. I really do. And it was just about timing and situation, and I wasn't the one home, My ex-husband now, but my husband at the time was a stay-at-home dad, and his opinion mattered. But I regret it. And I could have controlled that too. I should have just taken control completely and made sure.
Yeah.
Next time.
I think that's. I think that's definitely true. You can never regret. That's the great thing about kids is that you can't regret
Yeah.
having a kid, because once you have your child, I mean, before you have a certain number, you can always think about, well, what's the ideal number to me, and none of that doesn't matter anyway.
Right.
Once you have a child, it's like this. Your child, you love your child. You can't. How can you to regret having a kid means you wish your kid didn't exist, which is just a thought that I think the vast majority of parents can't even have in their minds. I hope. So that's the way I look at it. You can never regret having a kid, but you can regret not.
Right.
And there are plenty of people who want to have kids and never are able to, which is a great tragedy. But if you have a choice, you should have kids, and I do think it's the greatest joy in the world. Or I'll put it this way: the way I've always put it with kids is when you're a parent, it's the opportunity for the greatest joy in the world.
Yes.
If you accept the opportunity. Now, you could have kids and be miserable if you want. I mean, we can't get around the fact that there are people, there are adults walking around today who never talk to their parents anymore because their parents were just kind of miserable a-holes. And so you could have kids and be that way if you want to be. The opportunity for great joy is there, but you have to grab it.
You have to. You're right, and it is certainly the hardest thing too. And there's a lot of years I don't remember, to be honest with you. When my third was born, my first was still 3, and on ESPN and trying to survive career-wise and support the family. And I mean, it was just one big, world, which is probably good in some ways because you just trudge through it. You just keep going.
It's also, to me, it's like, it's how you choose. And I think this is true with everything in life. It's how you choose to perceive it in the moment.
Yeah.
So G.K. Chesterton has a quote, I think it's a great quote, where he says, an inconvenience is an adventure wrongly considered. Meaning, of course, any inconvenience could be a great adventure if you choose to just see it that way.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with parenting when you have kids. Most of the situations you find yourself in as a parent could be an opportunity for you to feel great, incredible joy if you choose to see it that way. Or you could choose to see this as some huge inconvenience, and you could choose to focus on, oh, there's so much noise in the house and all the kids need things.
Yeah.
And I've talked before about, it's like, this is very apparent to me every time I go home at night when I come home from work. And I walk into the house and there's 6 kids. And so there's going to be a lot of noise and there's a lot of commotion and a lot of things are happening, and the kids are going to want to all tell me stories about their day, and they're going to be good stories. There's going to be bad things that they're complaining about. There's going to be, they're going to need things, and there's going to be all these things happening. And I'm conscious of the fact that before I walk in the door, that I can either see this as incredibly annoying because I'm just getting off of work and there was traffic and I'm dealing with all these stresses that these kids don't even know about, all the things that go into like making their life possible that they don't even know about it.
Right.
And so I could just be incredibly irritated, leave me alone, I need some time to decompress. I could see it that way, or I could see it as, this is amazing. I'm walking home to these people who love me and they're just excited that I'm here, and there's so many things happening and there's never a dull moment and there's so much warmth and love in this house. It's the same situation. It's entirely how I choose to see it. And I think there are a lot of people who end up quite miserable, and especially as parents, they end up raising miserable kids who frankly hate them in the end.
Yeah.
Because every time they walk in the door at night, they choose the first option. They choose to see this as a burden and an inconvenience, and they choose to only focus on the things they can't do because of the kids, rather than to focus on all the things they can do that they never would have the chance if they didn't have children.
Mm-hmm. It's the biggest blessing that helps you maintain perspective no matter how much success or failure that you have. And I'm like, mine are all in college, and I am so sad. I'm so happy for them and proud of them, and so sad because the years went by quickly. And I was aware of that. I'm sure you are too. Like, that this is fleeting, and to enjoy every moment, which is cliche, but man, it's true. And now that they're off doing their thing, it's like, where did it go? What I would do to go back and not, right? It happened the way it was supposed to. But I miss when they don't care about anything else in the world but, okay, what's for dinner, and can mom read me a bedtime story, and hugs. Like, it really is simple what they want and need at that time. And I think a lot of parents, for maybe some legitimate reasons, right? Who knows what they're going through health-wise or mentally, but it's the best time. It really is.
When your kids are at an age where just your presence can bring them joy. Like when you have people in your life that you being around them makes them happy. And I travel a lot for work, and when I leave, it's a double-edged sword, because when I leave, the kids are sad and sometimes they get a little angry because they feel I'm traveling too much, and I've pulled back a little bit actually because
really.
But at the same time, so I'm kind of sad when I leave because they're sad. But if I left and they just didn't care, I don't think I'd prefer that.
True.
But I'm conscious of the fact that eventually my kids will be older and they're going to be perfectly fine going days and weeks, maybe months without ever being around me. And I'm very conscious of that. And I kind of dread it, to be honest. I can't imagine. Then it's one of those things, when it happens, and that's your life now.
And then I actually told them that I wouldn't pay for their college unless they went a different part of the country. People think I'm crazy, but we lived in Connecticut, so I was like, I'm not paying for any colleges up here, no matter what, New York, Connecticut, that area. But most importantly, I wanted them to be around other people and different cultures. And so I have two at High Point University in North Carolina, and then one at Ole Miss, and she is deep south, and it's tough because it's hard to get to them, and it's hard for them to just pop home real quick. But man, they're becoming independent and are meeting kids from all over the country. So it's like, I know I made that more painful for me as a selfish mother who wanted to do this. But like, I even talked about this recently, empty nester, you'll eventually be an empty nester. It's gonna take you a long time, like 9 years, maybe more if you guys have more children. It's not empty nester anymore, it's bird launcher. Sounds cheesy, right?
Bird launchers?
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's what I have to call it, so I don't cry every day, because that's what we do from the moment of birth. You're teaching them so much, right? To be independent, to hold your spoon or fork on your own, and now to drive hopefully safely and slowly on the road on the way to school. We're teaching them this independence. And so my nest might be empty, but like, look, they're out there flying on their own. Now, one of them called last night and said, hey, I'm going on spring break. Can I borrow a few more dollars? So they never really leave. And I hope they don't,
Yeah.
It's just gonna be a stretch for you. You guys still homeschool?
We do, yeah. But we do, there's also kind of a homeschool co-op.
Yeah, wonderful.
Which is one of the great things about homeschooling, is that you think you're totally on your own, but you don't. You can do it that way, but you don't need to. You plug, especially these days, plug into the local homeschool community, and which is important for the parent to have that support, but also you do want your kids to be around other kids. And I don't buy into the socialization argument for public school, but I do think that you want your kids to socialize and have friends and that sort of thing. So best of both worlds, hopefully, and that's what our kids do.
And they've got a dad who cares so much, obviously. And I know your wife, she's a mom, she's your wife. In a world where, relationships and marriage isn't what it used to be, to put it plainly, I guess. How would you characterize yours? And what it feels like is, the beautiful example that you're giving to your kids. Well, obviously to your wife in particular, because you have created quite a home for your 6 kids.
Yeah. I love being married. You could say that's what I have to say, which maybe is true, but I actually do. I actually do love being married. People talk about how marriage is really hard, and I don't mean, and I'm not dismissing anyone else's experiences. I can imagine how it could be, but in my experience, so I'm very blessed to have married the woman that I did, because it's actually not hard. There's parenting is hard. There's a lot of hard challenges in adult life, no matter what. But I don't see it as any great challenge to be married to her. I think it's fun, and I did the first 5 years of adult life alone. Living on my own, and so I've had that. I've done the alone thing, and going home to a house, or in this case an apartment, a 1-bedroom apartment, every night to just nobody, and not having anyone in your life who, I had my parents, but not anyone who's like right with you, who really cares deeply about you. And so I've done that. I've had that, and then I've tried the other way of having a house full of people who love you and having a wife who loves you, and I very much prefer the second option. I don't know, I think there are just simple things people talk about like what's the key to a happy marriage, and I think most of it is pretty simple, which doesn't always make it easy. And of course, if the other person is not doing the simple things, you can't control the other person.
Yeah.
So that can take things off the rails pretty quickly. But if you both are doing the simple things, then it'll work and it'll be fine. And some of those are, I mean, you talk to anyone who's struggling in their marriage or who the marriage ended, people always say things like money, that's what destroys marriages. I'm sure that's probably part of it. But what I hear anyway from the people I talk to who are struggling in marriage is always things like, well, they don't appreciate me. That's always one of the main themes I hear from men and women. My wife doesn't appreciate me. She doesn't see what I go out and I work for a living and I provide for the family. She just doesn't appreciate it. She never says thank you. And then you hear the same thing from women about their husbands. So that's like one of those simple things. Just you don't have to overdo it, but be aware that your spouse needs to feel appreciated. That's an actual need. And so having your own way of expressing gratitude, it doesn't have to be every second of the day, but making sure that like they know that you notice what they're doing and care and appreciate it.
It's huge.
And then once you have kids, and I'm always shocked by the married couples that I encounter that don't seem to realize this, but once you have kids, both the mom and dad need breaks. Like you need to make sure that your husband or your wife gets a break sometimes, because like I said, having kids is a great joy, but it is also taxing. It's also hard, and having people who need you all the time, having all these responsibilities constantly, it starts to wear on you. And so it's something simple like my wife will go on a Saturday morning, just go get a coffee, and she's gone for a couple hours without any kid.
Yeah.
Or she's doing whatever she's doing, and she comes back, and it's like making sure she has those moments, and she's very good about doing that for me. I like to go fishing.
Yeah.
People are sometimes shocked, like, well, you have 6 kids, there's no way you could keep up a hobby like that. I still do it because my wife understands that it's important that I have something that I enjoy doing apart from the family and work, and so she just like makes it a priority that I can do that sometimes.
That's great.
And I make it a priority that she can go out and do the things that she wants to do.
What about together? Do you get alone time and a date night, whatever?
Yeah, that's probably the third. So it's like make sure they're appreciated, make sure they get breaks, which is part of the appreciation. And then the third big thing is you gotta have time, the two of you. So we try to go out for kind of date night once a week. Can't always do it. Doesn't always work. We have to get babysitters and all that. But if you can do it, that's really important. And that's because that's the other thing that shocks me when I talk to married couples and they tell me that, oh yeah, we haven't been out in years, and that's crazy. I mean, you need your marriage is like starving. These are the moments that having those intimate moments. When I say intimate, just sitting down for dinner without kids around, being able to talk about things that you wouldn't be able to talk about with them there. I'm talking about that.
Yeah.
If you starve your marriage of those moments, then you're going to start to feel it after
You
a while.
will. How many years married?
14.
Okay.
Yeah.
And dating app?
Yeah,
You guys met?
Not an app. We met on a dating site, though. Because this is before apps didn't really exist.
Okay, so the equivalent of a dating app.
And my wife is always horrified when I talk about this publicly.
I think it's amazing.
I think it's great. And I was on the site for hardly any time before I met my wife.
eHarmony.
Yeah, eHarmony.
Was it a click heart thing to favorite somebody back then?
Something like that. Actually, so she I think she sent me a message or some little like whatever the signal was. So like, hey, I'm interested in you. And because I remember I was out on like a camping trip or something, and I came back and I had this little whatever it was in my inbox. I don't remember what it was exactly. And of course, the first thing I'm checking for, the first thing I see is, oh wow, this is a beautiful woman. I don't know why the hell she is at all interested in talking to me. I don't know what, maybe she was visually impaired or something, but I better take advantage of it. Yeah, and I messaged back and we talked on the phone for a couple of weeks, and then we met. We went on a date. I took her out to a dinner theater on our first date because she was a big fan of the theater.
Where is this?
This is in the Baltimore area.
Baltimore, home.
Yeah. And then we were engaged 6 months later.
Really?
Yeah.
So did you know that night, like right away?
I think I knew in the first month.
Mm-hmm. Did she?
She did, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How'd you do it?
How did I propose to her?
Yeah.
I made it more elaborate than it needed to be. Well, first of all, I made the mistake of proposing to her on April Fool's Day.
Oh.
I didn't think about that.
Really?
I didn't think about the fact that it was April Fool's Day, but she thought about it. So when I actually popped the question, I guess she thought potentially it was a joke. So that created some confusion. But I'm like, you really I mean, I like pranks as much as the next guy, but I'm not insane. That would be a crazy
here's this ring, psych.
Yeah, just kidding. I bought this ring. I went to a jewelry store and bought a ring just for this prank because I actually don't want to marry you. No, I wouldn't do that. But no, I took her down to I lived near the beach at the time. And actually what I did was I went to a gift shop and I got a shell and I planted the ring in a shell. And I left
like a clam shell with a close,
yeah.
Okay.
And I left the shell on the beach. And then I went, which was risky.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I met my wife because we were meeting down near the beach. And I said, because we were supposed to go to dinner or something, I don't remember. And I said, why don't we go for a walk on the beach first, just to see the ocean. And the plan was that we would just be walking along, and then she would see this kind of shiny shell that looks a little bit out of place and pick it up unprompted. That was the plan. And then open it unprompted and find the ring. And then I would get on that was the plan. It didn't work that way at all.
Okay.
First of all, the thing could have been washed away in the
I'm
ocean.
dying that you left it there.
I did.
For how long?
A good 30, 40 minutes probably.
Oh.
Yeah. So we went down to the beach and we're walking along and the shell's right there. And she doesn't even notice it. And I said, well, look at that shell. That's an interesting shell. And she said, oh, yeah. And then she kept walking. And I said, well, maybe we pick the shell up. What do you think? And at that point, she knew it was up. So the element of surprise was gone. And then I had a speech planned. I'd even practiced this little, because this is the moment in the romantic comedy or whatever where the guy says something really profound. And so I wanted to have about a 30-second profound little spiel.
Yes.
That I had thought up, and I forgot the whole thing. So
you forgot it?
I forgot the spiel.
Because she didn't go along with your plan
yes,
of picking
she
up.
ruined it. Yeah, she
totally
completely ruined it. I was off my game completely. I was totally at this. None of this is how it was supposed to go.
So you went and picked up the shell. And we're like,
yeah, I picked it up for her and gave it to her. It's like, why don't you open it? Especially because at this point she knew what I was doing, so she could have helped me a little bit more than she did. But she kind of at that point she made me, walk her through every step.
I love her, and I've never met her. She made you work for that. So what'd you say? You just let her open it? I hope you came up with something.
Yeah, I opened it and then I got on one knee and I said, I actually said to her, I forgot what I was going to say, but will you marry me? So,
this belongs on Curb Your Enthusiasm or something.
Yeah, it was a comedy. It was a comedy of errors for sure.
Did you get on your knee?
I did. Yeah, I got on my knee.
Okay, I was gonna say, please. I hope you didn't forget.
No, I didn't just throw the thing at her. It's will you just marry me already? Jeez, I didn't do that. I wouldn't put it past me to do that, but I didn't.
I mean, it does feel very Matt Walsh-ish based on the other persona.
Yeah, and the other problem too is that she already because
yeah.
I would never just say let's go for a walk on the beach. That's not really me. pointing to shells is not me at all. I'm not a guy who looks at shells. So the whole thing just, in my head though, there's a version of it that could have been great.
Well,
It worked exactly as
the end result worked.
The end result worked, yeah.
Does she tell the story similarly?
Yeah, she thinks the whole thing's hilarious.
It is.
She thinks it's great.
It actually is hilarious.
And she always leads with the fact that I decided to do this on April 1st. So to her, that was mistake number one in her mind. So
That is a great story. And so 15's coming. So let's plan ahead.
yeah.
Okay, I don't know what the
Take
gift
a trip
is.
down to the beach and
Yes. Put another shiny shell or two. See what
have
happens.
a more expensive ring in the shell.
Yeah.
And this time it will get swept away.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll spend the rest of my life combing the ocean floor.
It actually looks like a scene from one of your films.
Yeah.
It like with you out there with the metal detector and headphones.
Or I'll throw the thing into the ocean and then we'll go scuba diving to find it.
That's
It'll be a fun
very
activity.
very romantic.
Yeah.
Yes, no. I am so I meant that at the beginning when I said you have helped me just sometimes along the way affirm, like, okay, I'm not freaking crazy despite what the internet or friends say, Thank you for opening up in so many other ways besides the political way and the job way. That's easy, right? To me, this is what matters about humans and people, like their why every day, which is your wife and your kids and your faith and your 86 nieces and nephews.
Yeah, I've never told a story about the proposal publicly, so just cut that from
Okay.
just delete that.
Sorry, it's the best part.
That's gonna be like your little preview thing at the beginning of this video, isn't it?
100%.
Isn't that what's gonna happen?
100%. Maybe. You might have said a few other interesting things along the way. But and like that moment with my mom and dad on their bed watching your film was like, it was meaningful to our family. And they've been through it. Mom and dad, whatever I've been through, that's honestly nothing compared to them. So you said what others are afraid to say. Even if the Academy Awards in Hollywood doesn't deem it worthy. Does that bug you?
No, I mean, no. Yeah, because we knew that there was no chance that I'd actually get nominated. Yeah, we knew there was almost no chance. By all rights, I think we deserve to be nominated because we did have the top documentary by a mile of the year.
Yeah,
So
of the last decade, isn't it?
Of the last decade, yes. Thank you. So I think we deserve to be considered. I think we deserve, and I also think it's a good movie. So I think we made a good film, and so I think it deserved to be nominated. I think when I've talked about this, some people say, well, why would you even want an Academy Award? Like, why? It's like, well, yeah. I mean, I'd take one.
Sure.
I mean, I do think the whole thing is kind of nonsensical, but mainly the experience. The main reason I would want an Academy Award is to be able to go up on stage and give an acceptance speech.
That's why it'll never happen, right?
But that's the opportunity to give an acceptance speech at the Academy Awards is just, I would pay exorbitant sums just for that opportunity.
Oh my gosh, it would break the internet again. You've done that before.
Yeah, that would be my goal, which, like you said, is probably why it's never. The fact that I'm saying this right now means it's certainly
Sorry.
now.
You want me to cut this part out?
Cut this too.
Okay.
Cut 45% of this whole thing.
No. By the way, though, because now people have always known you, but I was surprised that with the racist movie, not that the movie was racist, let me rephrase
The
that.
racist movie.
That, I'm like, don't they recognize him? Don't they know? I mean, so if there's a third with whatever issue, I mean, it's going to be harder and harder, isn't it, to continue to do those?
It's harder, but we got to keep going.
You have to.
You can't stop at 2.
So what's next?
Well, you definitely have to cut that if I told you. But you've already made it clear you're not going to cut anything, so I can't. No, I don't know. We're working on some ideas. I think you can't stop at 2.
Yeah.
You can stop at 3. The trilogy works, but I don't think 2. So, and look, we didn't go that far in disguising my appearance in the last movie. It was a bit of a kind of lazy effort on our part, and it worked. But we could go farther if we needed to. And I think if we did another one, we'd probably have to go to
Facial hair. You have to take it off.
Well, there's some bridges that are just too far. But There are other things you can do, Fat suit, whatever.
Okay. I can't wait. You're a gift to all of us. Thank you, Matt Walsh.
Thank you.